Welcome everybody to the first Geek the F Out live stream. We're going to talk about Across the Spider-Verse. I am Lucha Johnny.
I'm Kayla, and we are joined by special guest, Brick Something.
Hey folks, good evening, good evening.
Woo-hoo. Welcome in. You gonna do a hard out like Joel with the music?
I'll let it I'm gonna let it slowly.
That's my favorite thing.
Pan out. I do have some
Fade away.
soundboard experience, so
This should be a celebratory Dole evening, and you had to call out his bootleg style. Man.
Yes. I mean, yes, he is very important to this stream. He's important to all of us, but very much so this stream. Anyways, we are here to talk about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'm so excited. I have so many thoughts. So many thoughts. But yeah, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, Brick, first, and then we'll get right into it.
Oh, sure. Again, Brick Something. I usually talk toys and other nerdy things. Have hung out with Kayla on a stream over on my channel called Well Played. We built Lego. It was Kayla's first time with Lego.
Yeah, it's up there.
And I love Spider-Man. I especially love this incarnation of Spider-Man. So I'm super happy to be here, and I appreciate you all inviting me here to geek the F out about Spider-Man.
So excited to have you here. Yeah, so we're gonna get into it. I will kind of go over roughly what we're gonna talk about. So we're gonna do our initial thoughts and reactions, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about the first movie, the cast and crew summary, just to refresh everyone on that. And then all the new cast members, we'll talk about the new cast members for this movie. And then we'll do kind of like a basic discussion where we'll include a lot of things and summarize our overall thoughts at the end, predictions for next movie, and, you know, whether we recommend it or not. So,
should we say hello to the Geek the F Out faithful here in the chat? Hello to Quip.
That would be a good idea.
Hello to Alice and Troy.
Hey, girl. Hey.
Hello to us. Hi, Kayla. Hi, Brick.
That was me.
Hello to Cobweb.
Hello.
Those are our early
name.
adopters.
Woo-hoo.
Yes.
That's a good crew.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So initial thoughts / reactions.
Actually, before that, I just realized we didn't talk about one thing. How spoilery are we going to get tonight?
Oh, this
just
is
to kind of lay it
very
out.
spoilery.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
100%.
Spoilers. We're talking about everything.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Made a banner. I didn't make a
FYI,
banner.
I know we're gonna flash. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
I don't have pretend.
This is what it is. I'm flashing it for you.
That's your
Good.
Without flashing.
Just needed to know. Just needed to know. So don't make any accidents.
Wait, hang on. I've got it.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Are you
Old
gonna
school.
bootleg it?
Yeah.
We're already
Spoiler
bootlegging
alert.
it on our first live stream.
I am curious for the folks in the chat who's been able to catch it. I know it's pretty early. It just came out officially yesterday.
I know Quip and Cobweb have.
Okay. There you go.
Nice.
There you go.
Spoiler alert.
It was animated and everything. That's great. It's great.
We're no 2-bit fly-by-night production here. Come on.
We are professionals. This is professional grade quality.
Oh, yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Looks like
Okay,
this is-
so spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, go bye-bye. Go away. Unless you are okay being spoiled, then feel free to stay. But come back and watch us once you have seen it. But yes, okay, initial reaction / thoughts. Go. Either one of you.
Okay, I'll just say I loved it. I will say, and we can talk a little bit more about when we get to the first movie, but the movie kind of means a lot to myself, to my family. It's, I think, one of the first superhero movies that my kids like really, really embrace in a big way. And then from there,
Yeah.
we kind of went back to other things. So much so that, my kids were obsessed with Miles, with Peter Parker, like all this stuff for a little bit. That said, I took the two kiddos, they're now 12 and 10-ish, and their 9-year-old friend to go check it Thursday afternoon. And
Nice.
seeing it with kids is an experience in and of itself.
I'm
But
sure.
that's my initial reaction. I'll just sort of leave it general that I loved it. I want to go see it again. Unlike you all, I've only been able to watch it the once on Thursday. And it's dense, it's layered. So I know that if I were to go back, there'd still be plenty for me to kind of unpack and experience.
Yep.
So thumbs up.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw it Thursday too. I took off work. I used some leave so that I could leave work at 1:00 and go see the earliest, the 2 p.m. showing at my local AMC. It was actually funny. The theater was not very full, but there was a dude there with his son, and during the previews, actually before the previews, the kid was like, "Papa, Ninja Turtles is coming out soon, right?" I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Just the way he said it. And then there was a Ninja Turtle preview during the previews that the kid was like, "Ah." But the movie itself was really cool. I liked that it focused on Miles and Gwen as much as it did Miles. And I know he's a pseudo villain in this, but 2099 Spider-Man I have a soft spot for.
Yeah.
I remember buying Spider-Man 2099 number 1 and number 2 in my local Unimart gas station that was like 2 blocks from my house. Never got past that, but always loved the design because I was like 12 when that comic came out. So I think the themes they were going for were a little over my head at the time, with like capitalism and corporate states and things of that nature. But I always loved the design of the suit. I obviously have the Marvel Legend right here. I had to bring him out for this. So I dig Miguel. I should go back and read his 2099 run now that I'm older and probably can understand it better. But I dug the movie. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely loved it. I give it 1,000 out of 10 stars. I'm really excited to talk about it. And yeah, like you were saying, Brick, there are a lot of layers. I did get to see it twice, and I watched a couple of breakdowns about it, and I'm like, ooh, now I want to like look for this thing and look for that thing next time. And I feel like, yeah, it's going to be one of those movies that every time you watch it, there's just going to be more and more and more stuff to get into, like more Easter eggs, more themes, more analogies, which was pretty much the same for the first movie. So yeah, I'm really excited to get into it. But yeah, loved it. Hi, Black Phoenix. Yeah, don't watch this. Luckily, I didn't really spoil anything right there. Go see the movie and then watch this later.
They knew what they were walking into. They were clear.
Yes. But yeah, okay. So a little bit about the first movie. Also, if you haven't seen the first movie, go watch it. Don't know why you would be here if you haven't.
Yeah, that's odd.
But yeah, so it was written by Phil Lord and Rodney Rothman. It was directed by Bob Paraschetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman. The animation coordinator was our very good friend Ryan Dill. And the score was by Daniel Pemberton. And in the first movie, as a little refresher, Miles gets bit by a radioactive spider, not from his dimension, but from an alternative one, Earth 42, which I loved how that came back to play in this movie. And yeah, he pretty much, the Spider-Man on in his dimension ends up dying. And then, he ends up somehow finds his way into Wilson Fisk's collider, which creates, pretty much, it's not like I don't know, basically it pulls in other Spideys from other universes. And so he meets Peter B. Parker, who was voiced by Jake Johnson, aka Nick Miller from New Girl. Big fan of him. And so he meets him first, and then meets Spider-Gwen and Penny Parker, Spider-Man Noir, and Peter Porker or Spider-Ham. And basically they have to take down this collider and then also go back to their own universes. But yeah, I mean, if you've seen it, you know, there's a lot more to it, but that was basically it. So in the first movie, took over the cast a little bit. Miles was played by Shamik Moore, and all these people reprised their roles in this movie. I thought I had heard something that one of them was going to be changed, but I think for the most part, at least the main characters were all the same voice actors. Gwen Stacy is played by Haley Steinfeld, aka Kate Bishop in the MCU. Already went over Peter B. Parker, and then the OG Peter in Miles' universe was played by Chris Pine. Uncle Aaron was played by Mahershala Ali, aka a fellow Gale alum. And Jefferson Davis played Brian Jefferson Davis was played by Brian Tyree Henry, aka Fastos in the Eternals, and also Paperboy in Atlanta. So that was a cool little crossover with Atlanta.
There's a couple of Atlanta crossovers. And also, real quick, Mahershala Ali is at least scheduled to be the MCU's Blade, right?
Mm-hmm. He is. I'm very excited for him.
So a lot of crossover.
Yeah, there really is. Rio Morales is played by Luna Lauren Valles. Aunt May is played by Lily Tomlin. Mary Jane, which I think was this Chris Pine's Mary Jane that was played by Zoe Kravitz?
I don't know.
I think it was.
I assumed it was Peter B. Parker.
Or is it Peter B. Parker?
The mama to the baby, I assumed.
Okay. I'm not sure, actually, because it doesn't specify. Mm-hmm. Spider-Ham is John Mulaney. Penny Parker is Kimiko Glenn, which loved her in Orange is the New Black. Spider-Man Noir is, of course, Nicolas Cage. That was very epic. Doc Ock was played by Katherine Hahn, and Wilson Fisk was Liev Schreiber. Loved his voice. I feel like they cast him really well. So for this movie, yeah.
No. Just thinking.
Oh.
while you're paused, I'll say it looks like Mary Jane in Across the Spider-Verse is Melissa Sturm. So I think Zoe was
Zoe was Chris Pine's
Spider-Man's Mary Jane.
Okay, yeah. That's what I thought. So then for this movie, there are some similarities in terms of the writers and directors. So this one is written by Phil Lord, same, and Christopher Miller, who's new to writing, but he was a producer on the first film. And then also Dave Callahan. And then it was directed by Joaquim Dos Santos, Kemp Powers, and Justin K. Thompson, who are all new to directing, which is interesting because I thought maybe they would keep at least one of the same directors. Composer is also the same, Daniel Pemberton, and the effects animation coordinator is also Ryan Doyle. I almost said Doyle. And so in this one, we have the super talented Oscar Isaac, who plays Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, right?
Yeah.
2099. And then we have Spider-Woman / Jessica Drew, played by Issa Rae, who I loved in Insecure, big fan. And then Paviter Prabhakar, aka Spider-Man India, was played by Karan. I'm actually not sure how to pronounce his name. Sony, who was in Deadpool.
He's Dopinder.
Yeah. I loved that. And then Spider-Punk / Hobie Brown was played by Daniel Kaluuya. Big fan of him. George Stacy was played by Shea Wingham. Lila was played by Greta Lee. The Spot / Jonathan Owen was played by Jason Schwartzman. Margot Kess / Spider-Bite was played by Amanda Stenberg, which I will always think of her as Rue from the Hunger Games. Like, that's always how I'm going to see her from now on. And then Ben Reilly / Scarlet Spider was played by Andy Samberg. And then there's a million other voices that play Spideys, which I loved. I found out in all the like breakdowns that I was watching. I loved, you know, all the different like voice actors that they brought in that have voiced other Spider-Man in like animated series and whatnot. So I thought that was really cool that they brought all those people in for the movie.
I love that every J. Jonah Jameson is J.K. Simmons, just every single one.
Yes.
And because he's so perfect for it.
Yes. I know. I was like about to include him, but I was like, well, I mean, yeah, he's in everything. He's in every Spider-Man playing the same character, which is very interesting because there are only a couple other, like Patrick Stewart, you know, there's only a couple others that do that across universes, it seems like. So, but that one's really funny that he's in every single one.
Couple quick notes on the talent. Amanda Stenberg will also be in currently in, I guess, making the Star Wars universe. She's going to be in, or they're going to be an Acolyte.
Yes,
and then you mentioned Joaquim Dos Santos, who comes from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, who did some directing there. So it's kind of neat to see all the pedigree behind this film. A lot of great animation folk and, you know, actors doing voice acting. It's pretty like it's crammed with talent. So, and it really is. And it shows.
It is stacked. And of course there's like a million other people that worked on these movies, but, you know, don't have time to list every single one of them. But, you know, just wanted to mention them and give them credit because I think it is important to name all of these people, especially with how diverse this movie is and how diverse the first movie was. You know, it's just so important to have that representation. And I think it is important to call out all those people. All right. Shall we get into it? Any place we want to start? Because my very first note is they have the cough animation at the very beginning. I don't know if either of you noticed that, but I loved it.
Tiny right-hand corner?
Yes.
Yeah.
It said cough, which ironically someone in the audience coughed at the same time. Both times I saw it. Both times I saw it, it happened. And I was like, wait, did I really just see that?
I mean, just on that note, I gotta say, like, in general, I feel like the people who worked on this, it was kind of like their love letter to a lot of different aspects of Spider-Man, right? Yeah. And so that little cough thing and some of the other notes, like around Hammer
Space, like the editor's notes that they would pull in.
Yeah, it's totally like this love letter to comic books, right? Even the animation style, which they took this different approach with each different sort of universe or multiverse, whatever that they Spider-Verse, it's right there in front of my face. For each Spider-Verse that they're in looks a little bit different in terms of art direction and style. So that little cough thing is so great in terms of just like comic books. You're in a comic book movie, like a truly powerful, like we are in comics. Yeah, Ryan.
Dole is here.
Yep.
Oops, that one.
We are appreciating and discussing your work.
What up, Dole?
We just went through the credits for both movies, and which included the writers, directors, and then we included you in the cast. Just so you know. Sorry, continue, Brick.
No, I mean, just like you could tell, and you know, Dole can tell me if I'm wrong, but it just seemed like the people working on this really loved every little aspect of Spider-Man, of comics, and it shows. So in that, like, cough, the onomatopoeia and the sort of visual depiction of that, or I don't know, everything from like that sort of medieval Renaissance vulture being rendered the way he was, really rough. Yeah, totally in this sort of like, you know, monochromatic brown, white with a pencil, gesture marks, and it's beautiful, right? I love that. So when I see the cough, I like right away, it's like you're in a truly comic book movie, right? And and then again, the Hammerverse, it was just the only thing they needed to say. Hammerspace, sorry. So many verses. The only thing missing, I think, was maybe like enough said at the end or something. But it was just, oh yeah, I'm in a comic book.
They even did and this was the first thing, like when Gwen's leaving the band practice, they do the like split panels, kind of like was it the Ang Lee Hulk?
Yeah,
which I always thought was neat, and it works because you're doing a movie about a comic book. Like, do it. I thought it was nice touches.
Yeah. All those little details are just so great. And I may not be a comic book reader, but I mean, I know enough to like know all those little things that we're talking about. And I still really appreciate them. You know, I think they're awesome. I think it just pulls it into a whole meta level that I love. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. You can tell it's a love letter from these comic book lovers, and it's just so. I know. I'm sorry. I will. I have some comics. I will read them.
Start reading comics, or just look at the pictures.
It's gonna be another thing like we did with our Star Trek show. I'm like, I don't know where to start. There's so many. Start at the beginning.
I haven't actually read much comic-wise either. I read, my best friend in high school had a subscription to like every Spider-Man title that was being printed. So I got to read all of Maximum Carnage that way. And I remember I wasn't reading anything at the time, but I remember him being really put off by the Clone Saga. I have 2 big omnibuses for Ultimate Spider-Man. And they never apparently put out the 3rd one, but I was looking on Wikipedia the other night, and it's finally the 3rd like Ultimate Spider-Man omnibus is coming this September. So I'll be able to pick that up, and it'll have the last of like all the final issues of Ultimate Spider-Man. So I will have been able to read that complete run, which is where Miles originated from, if I'm remembering correctly. He was part of the Ultimate line. I didn't get that far because those first 2, I don't think he's in those first 2 omnibuses.
Well, just on that note, I think definitely reading the comic books is helpful. I did wonder, and I often wonder how much one needs to, or, you know, when I walk into these movies, I'm kind of like, will it enhance your experience if you know about it? Will it detract because you're frustrated because they change things, whatever? And so again, to go back, I went with 3 kids, 9, 10, and 12. They've never actually read Spider-Man comics. They don't know the history. They now at this point are aware of the MCU Spider-Man, and because of where the MCU went, they're a little bit aware of Andrew Garfield and, you know, Tobey. So like they don't know about all that stuff. And I have friends who are like, oh, I don't know if I can go check out these movies because I didn't read the comics. You really don't have to. Like there definitely are a lot, like this film especially is filled with comic book Easter eggs, but the approach really is, we're familiar with it. We know the material really, really well enough to be able to, I think, pull out the things that matter about these comic books, but then really like create this 2-hour plus experience that I think works on just a storytelling level, and definitely on a sort of like a big screen visual level, that I don't know. I don't think it's something you need to do, but you mentioned the Clone Saga, for example, and I think it was Quip pointing out that was it Quip saying that Sandberg was the voice of Ben Reilly, who was central to the Clone Saga.
That.
Yeah, just that. That's an example in my mind of where I feel like you would perhaps laugh even harder if you were around during that time and were reading it, as well as sort of being involved in geeky circles with people's different like commentaries about that character and how that whole thing was rolled out. This movie really kind of plays with it. So on the one hand, there are things in there that I think would definitely just enhance the experience if you're familiar, and then most of it you don't need. It's just, you know, anyway, just an amazing time. to see all this stuff on screen in this way. Pretty crazy.
I think it's
Agreed.
similar to I see a lot of people complaining about stuff with like the latest season of The Mandalorian and whatnot, bringing in a lot of stuff from like Rebels or Clone Wars, and I'm like, I haven't watched any of the animated stuff yet. I know I should. I haven't, but I didn't
No
have any
judgment.
trouble following what was going on without
Yeah.
having watched that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
it helps. It might give you more context or make it go do the DiCaprio meme, but I didn't have like I wasn't confused. I didn't know what was going on because they were leaning into that past. Like I feel like they
Exactly.
explained it well enough through basic dialogue that you kind of would be able to know what's going on. And I think with this too, like if you watched Into the Spider-Verse, it starts with Miles before he's Spider-Man, right? Like or he's just. Is that right? Am I remembering correctly? I just watched
Sorry.
it the other day.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse starts before Miles
Before.
gets his powers in Into the Spider-Verse. So
Correct.
like we start on the same page that Miles does in that movie. And he's learning all this stuff with all these different spider people the same way if you aren't familiar with comics that the viewer would be. So like to your point, yeah, if you have that background knowledge, it can help enhance your enjoyment of it, but I don't think it's required.
Yeah. Exactly.
I bumped my keyboard.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it kind of great because both sides of the coin can really appreciate it. And I know for me, yeah, I may not have understood a lot of the references, but it made me dive deeper into it and look at the breakdowns that I was watching of it. And yeah, they would be like, oh, the Spider-Man is from like this universe and this Spider-Man's from this universe and this is a call out to this thing in the comics. Like I love learning in general and I love learning more about all this geeky stuff. So I really appreciated that. And it was kind of funny because I think this was one of the first times I've seen like either like a Marvel or a geeky movie that some people in the crowd were reacting to things and I was like, I don't get it. Like I think this was the first time because I didn't see the first Into the Spider-Verse in theaters. I saw it later on, so that probably would have been the same thing. But I think this was the first time when people were like audibly exclaiming about things, and I was just like, shoot, I'm missing out on this. It was only a couple of times, but when I saw it the second time, I knew what those things were. But the first time I was like, oh no, I don't know what this is. But like it intrigued me. It didn't make me feel like, oh, I don't know this. Like it was like, ooh, I want to learn. I want to learn about what this is. Like what this Easter egg is.
One of those random things was when Miguel was fighting with Vulture and I think he was talking to Gwen and he's like, we're cleaning up your shocking mess. I was like, because shocking is in that comic book. Shock is like their equivalent of the F-bomb. We can say it's we're not for kids.
In 2099, yeah.
In 2099, shock equals fuck. So I was like, oh, they used it.
We
can say that here. No,
we are called Geek the Fuck Out. So
shock equals frack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Frel. Throw a little farce.
Which I found that out later. I was like, oh, that's a cool little call out. Like all these little call outs and Easter eggs, which is so awesome. So awesome. And how many they were able to fit in here is just even crazier.
On the note of how many, so it's called quantity. It's called Across the Spider-Verse. Like we are officially in the era of multiversal storytelling, right? Whether it's Masters of the Universe with Masterverse, the MCU, of course, is doing its thing. We've got this with the Spider-Verse. And so in terms of like the comic book, we're talking, I think, a little bit before. And Kayla, you were saying, oh, it's good that you read the comics because, you can kind of refer to those things. I will say one of the things that kind of worried me coming into this movie was knowing the Spider-Verse, the original sort of like Spider-Verse saga. And I will just say, without going too deep, I wasn't I was into some aspects of it, especially the sort of like the mechanics of visiting different spider people across the Spider-Verse and this creation of this like this web of whatever destiny kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's really not at all in this movie. And I was super happy to see that because I was worried that it was going to detract from what to me was the sort of core of the storytelling is sort of Miles being Spider-Man and what that means, right? Both for the audience and sort of like the fandom. There's Miles Morales being Spider-Man is a big deal to many people for all sorts of reasons we can get to in a little bit. And then Miles Morales being Spider-Man in the comic, sort of replacing his universe as Peter Parker. I love how they kind of address that in a very like real way in this. It's almost like, again, we're doing full spoilers here, that Miles Morales is sort of like we come to discover that he's sort of a problem to Miguel O'Hara and them because he's essentially an anomaly, a multiversal, spider-versal anomaly because he was bit by a spider from a different reality, right? And because of that, he was never meant to be Spider-Man, right? And so he becomes Spider-Man, and then at least it's sort of said in the film that things corrected itself by basically killing that universe's Chris Pine Spider-Man. So there was all that stuff that, all that to say is like, I was really happy that this movie didn't veer off into like Spider Hunters and all this other places where it could have from the comic, and instead was like, no, this is about Miles. We're going to work in the Spider-Verse to really factor and circle around Miles while also like doing a great job of allowing us to spend a lot more time with Gwen and get to know Gwen and then see them sort of like parallel their two stories. Anyways, beautiful in terms of just storytelling, in terms of balancing this really crazy sci-fi mechanism of a multiverse thing. Cool stuff. Super cool.
Yeah. On that note, I was watching one breakdown that said, I don't know if it's true or not. They mentioned it, and you know, they have millions of subscribers, so I'm like, I'm guessing this is true, but they said that the original Miles Morales comic was inspired by Donald Glover's character in Community when he came out of bed in Spider-Man PJs.
There was like a
Is this
clamor.
true?
There was a clamor for people. There were people saying, "Oh, Donald Glover needs to be Spider-Man." I didn't realize that. I'm assuming that was a Screen Crush. Maybe
I think it was either Screen Crush. I think it might have been Screen Crush. I don't think it was New Rockstars.
I watched Screen Crush's breakdown today or last night, and they talked about it there too. Yeah.
Just a short note in my family to give you a sense. My 12-year-old, after we watch anything, whether it's Star Wars or a Marvel movie, he goes, "Cool, can we watch the Screen Crush?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's watch it." That's how embedded it is in our
Screen
family.
Crush, but the only thing is he pronounces things so badly. Like, he's so bad at pronouncing, which granted, so am I, but like also you have millions of people watching you. Like even in this one, he definitely pronounced things wrong. And then when he was doing the Rings of Power, oh god, it was so bad. And so that's my one little nitpick. And I do love New Rockstars maybe a little bit more just because like the energy is a little more upbeat.
That's
I guess
personally.
Yeah. Go for it, Johnny. Sorry.
That's like Saffron Olive talking about the Lord of the Rings magic card spoilers and calling it Rivendell and Aragorn.
Yeah.
he's not a Lord of the Rings fan. But he pronounces everything wrong anyway.
I appreciate the effort. I appreciate trying. I'm not trying to like gatekeep anything, just it's because he does it, the fact that he does it a lot, it just stands out to me a little bit. But yeah.
Well, so I watched that same Screen Crush thing, and I wasn't sure of the order of things. I didn't realize that was prior to the creation of Miles Morales. I didn't think so. I don't know. But I do know, just with the Donald Glover of it all, like there was this move to have him cast in the Spider-Man movies. And so that was a big thing. I thought that,
I mean,
again, that
he
was
was in
after Miles
Homecoming.
Morales. Right. And then he was in Homecoming as the character who becomes a Prowler, right? And I love it in this film. Again, I guess I'm cautious for whatever reason. It's like, oh no, but we're full spoilers. He shows
Yes.
up in the movie. Live
Yeah.
action
Yes.
Donald Glover
Ah,
there imprisoned in
that was
2099 as the
so
Prowler.
amazing. Like, I wondered
Man.
if we were gonna get any live action people. I kind of figured we might, only because maybe something that Dole said. Just, well, it was just that he said that you would want to see this right away, and that just, for some reason in my mind, made me think like, oh, there's gonna be some cameos in this.
And
Just like with No Way Home.
and more than just live action, like we had Mrs. Chen from the Venom
Yeah.
movies.
Mhm.
We
Which
had
she was the first live action that we saw.
and we had Donald Glover as the Prowler from maybe the MCU, maybe not.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
we
he
had
did say he had a nephew named Miles
yeah,
in the deleted scene.
we had Insomniac Spider-Man with a speaking line, which was fantastic because that game is great. The Spider-Man video game, the Sony Spider-Man video game.
That's beyond me. All I've seen are just I've watched people play it online, but I don't have a system. Yes, so please. So that character was in it?
Yeah, he was the one when they were walking through and talking about the villains. What's the Lila? Was that the little digital assistant?
Lila, yeah.
It was like, here's a video game guy and here's another video game guy, and Insomniac Games Spider-Man, because he's got the Spider-Man suit with like the white. It almost looks like it's a Captain America Spider-Man mashup suit.
Yeah.
He's like, "Are you talking to me?" So that was cool for me because I've played through that game. I'm waiting for the second one to come out. I'm waiting for the Miles Morales game to go on sale before I buy it. Drop the price. So that was fun. There's all sorts of things from all sorts of different mediums in it.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, did you all have favorite cameos?
I mean, I didn't know a lot of the like other Spideys that they showed, so I think for me, it was probably Donald Glover.
Yeah, I think I said cameos, but I mean, or like other Spider people.
Yeah. Although when I heard Andy Samberg's voice, I was like, oh, I love Andy Samberg. Love him. Which almost sounded like Nicolas Cage again, because he does do that kind of Nicolas Cagey voice on purpose.
Extreme
And I was like,
90s
what?
comics.
That's not him.
Ben Reilly, so intense. Yeah.
So dramatic. Yeah. What about you guys?
I enjoyed seeing Insomniac Spider-Man, and I liked when they were going through like the spider web of canon events. They showed Toby, and they showed what's his name? Andrew Garfield. Yeah, his their live action stuff.
Yeah.
There were some that I was wondering if we'd see that we didn't get, and maybe they'll be in the next one, which we'll talk about that later as well.
Oh, so excited. And I'm so glad it's coming out next year. Thank God.
I know. The Lego Spider-Man was a surprise.
That was awesome. I was so excited. I know, but like, I'm a recent Lego fan. There's my Rivendell up there.
But that was a fun sort of like Lord and Miller connection too, because of the Lego movie. Love that. Of course, I'm a Lego person, and Cobb mentioned that too. It's great with a little stop motion looking, a little bit.
What? Sorry, sometimes. Lego.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the effort. Not gatekeeping, but I appreciate the effort. Lego is plural.
Yes.
I'm old, so I appreciated Peter Parked Car. If you all are familiar with the little dune buggy, that was awesome.
That was so funny. That was so funny.
Yeah, there was another one pulled from the sort of
thanks, Allison.
Peter Porker kind of thing, a Mysterio. a moose.
Oh,
stereo.
they had a Miss Stereo, and they
yeah.
had what was the other one? Why am I blanking on this now?
Brick just said it.
Oh, you did?
Moose. The moose?
Moose Stereo, yeah.
Yeah.
Which the moose, they had that moose, and then there was like another moose in Miles' room that I guess was a call out to Lord and Miller's other movie that I'm blanking on right now. Nope, no one knows what I'm talking about. Okay.
I was distracted by Allison's comment, but I'm
Oh.
again, it's one of those things.
It's okay. Thanks, Allison.
What were some of the other ones?
There were
there
so
many.
There were a ton. Absolutely.
That's one of the things. I don't know if it's going to take. I don't think you're going to be able to document all of them until this is on like streaming platforms or.
I forget if it was New Rockstars or Screen Crush that they mentioned they created 280 spider people or spider things.
Screen Crush had a pretty comprehensive list, but it's a lot. Like
Same
even ones that haven't necessarily been separate Spider-Man, but like Peter's Iron Spider armor, the original like armored where it's like a quilted steel, like they had that guy in there. They had like a Spider-Man in the rubber electrical resistant suit. Like they even took suits that weren't necessarily specific to a unique Spider-Man and had them as unique Spider-Man in the fortress, whatever, in Nueva York.
Yeah.
In their headquarters.
Nueva York. Yeah, you mean like, in other words, costumes that Peter Parker in Earth 616 wore.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sorry, that was ridiculously nerdy of me, but yes. Oh, look, I'm on Geek F out, so.
Yes. Get as geeky as you want here.
Yeah, I God, there were definitely just so many. I love Hobie, punk rock Spider-Man. Not really.
Oh my gosh! Yes, let's talk about him for a second.
Key character. Sure, go. What you thinking?
He was great. I loved the animation style, and I think it was on New Rockstars that they mentioned also like ads for both of these channels.
Yeah.
We've mentioned them so many times now. That they mentioned how he's like, oh, I hate the AM, I hate the PM, which like was a little call out to the Prime Minister because like they were very like anti Margaret Thatcher punk rock. So I thought that was really cool. But like, yeah, his character was just awesome, and how he just randomly grabbed those things as they were going to see Miguel, and that ended up being the watch that he made at the end. Like that was amazing. Not only for the character but just writing in general. Like loved that. And I think Quip mentioned that in the Discord, in the GDL Discord. Loved that little bit. And and how he's just like, fuck all of you, I'm leaving, this is happening, and then comes back or he also, tells Miles to, use your palms to like escape. He literally was showing him that. And it was just like, fuck you, I'm getting out of here. Comes back and helps them. Yeah, just loved his character, just loved his line. I have the one that was towards the end that it's like, oh, taking a crap on the establishment, I salute you.
Yeah.
I loved that. That was so great.
Yeah.
So good.
When she was when Mayday was crawling around, he's like, "Kid's an anarchist," with like this grin on his face.
Oh, and when they saw the like black hole opening in Mumbattan, he was like, metaphor for capitalism. I was like, oh, so good. So good.
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic. I love the sort of characterization of that character in particular in this movie. Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was great, and I love the way he's rendered. Again, just how they were able to they stuck to this idea of every Spider-Verse has its unique look, right? And that he had this real like, cutout collage like look, this punk rock look.
So cool.
Like photocopied zine type thing, and every time he took off his mask, it was almost like in black and white Xerox. It was gorgeous. I loved on that note Gwen's world.
I was about to say the watercolor.
Oh man, those are some of my favorite
chef's kiss.
Favorite pieces of art in like,
and how when they hugged, it
yeah.
would like change colors, and or even the scene with her and her dad at the beginning when she revealed himself to be Spider-Gwen, and like all the colors changed and they would like bleed, or they would kind of turn into like an acrylic style paint. I loved that so much.
Yeah. Yeah, just it was great. There were like I love all the different sort of like little Spider cameos and seeing all the different folks in there. I'm kind of a little stuck on. I was wondering where, I don't know if there were any Electric Company references. I think again, Screen Crush mentioned something that might have been sort of taken from there, but that was one of my. I think that might have been my earliest interaction with Spider-Man was through Electric Company, which was this old educational thing, like sort of. Sesame Street was probably a good parallel on public broadcasting, where they had these Spider-Man segments. And was there? I think he was in it, but he didn't play a very significant role, and I was kind of hoping he would. But Spider-Man from when there was a Japanese
the Tokusatsu.
Yeah. Maybe in the next one, maybe he'll figure in more because he's fantastic in the comic book.
I want to say,
I
think
saw
Screen Crush
that
said
listed.
They had at least the Spider-Man like in one of the background shots.
Yeah, like more
not
background.
With, not with the mecha, but at least the Spider-Man himself alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I saw that in the list of voices when I was on IMDb. Maybe not.
But anyway, I don't even know. So we've talked a bunch of different Spider-Verses. We've talked a little bit about the art.
Yeah,
I guess
loved the animation. I mean, I loved it in the first movie, and I feel like like what we talked about, it was even more comic booky in this movie.
What I love though about this movie and the first one is that it is like it's amazing. It's spectacular. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But in terms of spectacle, it's like it's shoving things in your face. The way things look, things move fast, right? Dialogue is sometimes fast. Action is fast. In fact, my 12-year-old kid of all things was like, that kind of moved a little too fast for me. And I was kind of surprised by that. It's like, I kind of missed some things. But it's true. It's quick. Dialogue's quick. Action's quick. The effects, visual styles, and art directions change pretty quick. Right, that Lego thing is also just like one of like within the span of a couple of minutes,
5 seconds.
Yeah, things move fast. So on the one hand, it's very like actiony, fast, very spectacle driven. But on the other hand, just the stories that are told are superhuman and super space human, and just filled with a lot of like heart, I guess. I loved it. Right, I loved the dynamic, for example, in this movie with Gwen and her father, and sort of seeing that flesh out a little bit more, and then really seeing Miles and his parents. Gorgeous. Like that stuff was great. There were conversations between Miles' mom sort of having this real deep heart to heart with her son, and I'm here with my 12-year-old to my right, like just looking at him going, you listening? I loved it. I mean, it's just the way they're able to balance the like fantastic nature of everything, and then really give us these human moments that to kind of tie it to like this sort of conversation around like diversity. Part of the reason this is so important to me as a person of color was being able to see like, hey, there's this brown/black kid on there, like this Afro Latino kid and his family on screen, and like they're the center of the story. They're like the subject of the sentence, not the predicate. That's a trip. But so on that note, seeing that rooftop party, that family party of just like the uncle, who I'm assuming, because that's in my world, the uncle DJing, who's turning up the music so that people don't hear the family
always
fighting.
The uncle.
It's like, damn, I've been here. Like, hey, auntie. And like, he's walking in. All the aunties are talking to him, trying to get his attention. It was beautiful. Like, and I will say that's not necessarily something that existed in the original comic book. appreciate you, Bendis, but it just wasn't in there the way that this movie, I feel like, really kind of captures some of the real, in my head at least, like real experiences, real moments that are like, oh, this is totally believable, and I love it. So
yeah. Speaking of the mom, she when they were in the guidance counselor office and she snapped her fingers and the little Puerto Rican flag came up, I died. That was just perfect.
So
It's just
good.
those little details make it great, and yeah, those little nods to, you know, other cultures, other countries, you know, anyone who's not white is just so great to see on
If they didn't
screen.
spoil some of the jokes in there, I would have been like, like when they're going over his grades, and then it gets to the moment where you gotta
The
be in
Spanish.
Spanish. I was just like, oh my God.
Oh God.
I feel like
Yeah.
I've
I
been in
mean,
this parent-teacher conversation before. But anyways,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I'm a
I
teacher,
have a
for the record. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that are fluent in Spanish, and it was always so funny to me when they wouldn't just like ace the classes right away. Well, I mean, it also, you know, especially with Spanish, like, you know,
Yeah.
there's Mexican Spanish, there's Spain Spanish, you know, and there's just like, it depends on, you know, your household, and it's a
Yeah.
whole, just like with any language, there's a lot of different layers to it. And, um, but yeah, it was always so funny to me. And yeah, their parents would always get on them. They're like, you literally speak this language. How are you not acing this?
It was so good.
Yeah, I found that funny. Oh, and the line in that same scene, I wrote it down that his dad said, let me find it. Oh, that sounds like a good fake job.
Oh, yeah.
That was so good. So good.
And even the dynamic between his dad and his mom, like the second the Spanish thing comes up, it's perfect. You see the dad go like, oh, I know where this is going. Or like you see him kind of shrinking a little bit. He's like, okay, this is like, and that's like, it's perfect. It's like, oh yeah.
And that same, and that same dynamic when they ground him, she's like, oh, you want to say it? He's like, all right, you grounded.
Yeah.
And then they keep upping the months every time. I thought that was funny. Even when they say to Gwen at the end, like, tell him 5 months and we love him. And I was just like, oh, that's just like a perfect little combo tied up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
I love his parents. Like, I love Rio. I love Jeff. They're both great. And Jeff pouring his heart out to Spider-Man, who is his son, about his son.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Oh my gosh. His line.
You want to talk about it? I love it.
Both Miles and Gwen have the worst I'm not a teenager voices. Like when they're both trying to sound older, and it's just hilarious.
His line, Miles' line, it's like, well, men of your age don't really like
talk about their mental health.
Yeah, and I was just like, yes, I was snapping in the theater.
He's not wrong. He is 100% correct. Not
wrong at all. Which I think some people around me were, or especially older men, were just like, huh? And I was just like, this is exactly why I'm snapping, like, because you don't get it. But also Miles' line in that scene when he's like, as a objective observer from the outside, just completely reminded me of the line in She's the Man, where she's like, as a third person outsider with no personal interest in this situation. That was so good.
The movie does is super smart, and I feel like even though, because someone mentioned the exposition, it's so funny. Even its use of exposition feels very thoughtful, because I don't know. There's just a lot of things that they don't feel the need to belabor. They like trust the audience a lot. They're like, we're gonna say this thing, we're gonna trust that you got it, and we're gonna move on. Like that whole conversation around men of your age, da, da, da. It's like they don't really need to explain it. Like if you've been awake and breathing in this moment, you should generally get this. And if you don't, it's fine, and we move on. I love that. And then same goes for the exposition. The exposition, it's Yeah, you could say they do give you all the character backgrounds pretty quickly, but they do so in a way where it's like it's fun, it's quick, it feels like it makes sense. They created sort of this mechanic where every time they introduced the Spider-Man from the first movie, they did it. So you're kind of like, okay, I'm hip, I'm with it.
And throwing down the comic too. Love that.
They keep
those are
saying
great.
they keep saying let's do this one last time, and they keep doing it again and again.
Yeah.
Which was awesome because at the beginning of the movie, she said, "Let's do this like what'd she say? Let's do this the right way."
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and the whole movie was essentially her pitch to these people, to all these other Spideys, to come help her save Miles. Like it was like a whole, like, tied everything together again, which I didn't realize the first time watching it. And then I was like, oh yeah, like this is her sales pitch to all these people to help Miles. Like, especially when she's talking about him too, like, you know, he's a good kid, like, and blah blah blah. I loved that. Just like, so good. Like worth the 5-year wait in between movies.
And that's super consistent for the character, because from the first film, she was the one who had to like convince everyone, like, no, we need to give him the shot, right? And like, I don't know, she does this thing for that particular dynamic with him. That's an established thing, and I buy that a lot because, and I don't know if I'm just overthinking it, but even in that first movie where she kind of gives us a little bit of her background with losing her Peter Parker, her friend, right? Which we learn a whole lot more about in the second movie. But I was with that in the first movie, like, oh, she's glommed on to this other younger dude because of her experience with like her friend. I don't know. There was just a lot of that. And so she was the one advocating for like, no, he can do this. There was, not totally consistent. But then in this movie, for her to be like, yeah, no, I don't know, just to kind of, I guess, advocate for him and then eventually say, we need to go and help him and get other folks on board. I don't know. I love that. And I love, again, that she was so central in this movie and we got to learn more about her.
Yeah. I'm very curious how they're going to do the next movie, like who they're going to focus on, or if they're going to broaden it out a little bit more. Yeah. We can go into that for our predictions a little bit, but very, very curious about that. But yeah, anything that unites people together, I'm always a big fan of, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we may be different, but you know, we have a lot more similarities than we think, and we should, you know, maybe focus on that instead of trying to divide and tear each other apart. Crazy idea. So
could we talk story a little bit? And let me ask you all the question. So what is your understanding of why Miguel built this whole thing, or at least his explanation for why he built this team to protect the Spider-Verse? It's not a test at all. I'll just say because but I don't mean it in that way, because I know sometimes it's like, what did you? But my son was wondering about it, and we had this real big conversation. I was like, yeah, what like is yeah. So I just want to kind of hear, what was your understanding of that?
And from my perspective, he is like, he's taking it upon himself to essentially build the equivalent of the Spider-Versal TVA.
Yeah.
Because he talked about the Collider is what started everything, from my understanding. So all that stuff in the first movie led to him being able to go to another universe where he had died, and he like tried to slot himself into the remains of his family with his wife and kid there. And that essentially in MCU terms caused an incursion. Like, they didn't use that term in this movie, but when he was showing the web and they were talking about canon events, that multiversal tree looked exactly like the sacred timeline from Loki.
Think that was on purpose.
Yeah, he saw what happens when there's when someone goes somewhere they're not supposed to be, stays there for a long time, and he realized that he needed help stopping it. So since it gets a little foggy from there on out.
Yes.
Where he got all the tech to be able to monitor the Spider-Verse and find out what a canon event is, this, that, and the other thing. But that's my understanding. Like his reasoning was, he's essentially the Spider-Versal, founding the Spider-Versal TVA.
Same,
Awesome.
no notes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally thinking, I was like, oh, so he's the TVA of this universe.
I've seen lots of discussion about people being like, well, Spider-Man, regardless of which one, it wouldn't accept you can't save everybody. I'm like, but a lot of them have been through circumstances where they tried to save everybody and didn't. So maybe they would be more likely to like, well, try to save this one person or try to save their entire universe. They might be more likely to go, well, we're going to try to save the entire universe.
Yeah. And that's so central to all of the Spider-Man, just like how they had those canon events. It's, choosing the one person or choosing the many. Sorry, Brick, you were going to say something.
No, I was going to go to that as well. But so then part of the question is, there was this implication that he saw an incursion, as you say, right, in that other reality that he sort of stepped into. Like, and what we saw was that reality essentially like falling apart, right? But then, so the wondering is, when it comes to what was it? Not Manhattan.
Mumbai.
Mumbai. That's right. Mumbai
and Manhattan had a baby.
Is the implication that you just stopped a canon event, or maybe to use the language of what if, MCU's what if, what do they call them? Like constant
Nexus events.
Yeah, they're like nexus events that must happen, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
So now is the expectation that Mumbai, that universe, is going to collapse?
That's
I think that's
from my understanding is that's what they're implying, like that universe could collapse, and that's why all of the spider people come into that universe with the devices that they start unloading. And like Miguel says, if we're lucky, we can stop it. We haven't always been lucky, so it's a toss up. They might be able to save the Mumbatan Earth because of the disruption of the canon event, or they might not be able to stop it with whatever those. They make me think of transport pattern enhancers from Star Trek, but whatever those things that they were setting up was around the growing, very on brand for the channel.
Yes.
Whatever those plinths they were setting up around the black hole were, I'm thinking the intention is that they will either stop the collapse of the universe or they won't. And they don't tell us in this movie if that
they don't.
If that happens or not.
Okay, so it's not necessarily that it will, because the question that I had stemming from that was, if we go back to the explanation that we find out later as to why Miles Morales is such a big deal, and why they're almost a little bit suspicious of him, or it almost was like, are we asking? It was a little fishy, because it was like, are we asking him to join us, or are we trying to keep close tabs on him and maybe even contain him because he is in fact an anomaly, right? I think there was, if I understood that correctly. So my wondering was, because they said that, well, you were an anomaly and you became Spider-Man, and that wasn't supposed to happen, right? Again, I'm stuck on the TVA language, right? It created a branch timeline. So now the universe, what I also heard was that then that multiverse or Spider-Verse or whatever had to correct itself, and it did so by killing off that Peter Parker. Is that
possible?
Right?
I don't know if
I don't know.
I think I don't know that we've been told one way or the other yet, because Yeah, he's bitten by a spider from a different dimension.
Yes.
So you've got that aspect to it. So regardless, he is an anomaly. And like we see later at the end of the film, because of that, that Earth 42 doesn't have a Spider-Man. Like, who was supposed to be their Spider-Man? There's a
And the world
there's a
is burning.
screenshot going around from near the end of the movie with a spot where there is a spider descending, and it shows what looks like the Prowler Miles with
Miles
braids.
G.
So it looks like it might have been Miles in Earth 42 anyway. But I mean, that's just all we have to go on is conjecture because it hasn't been outright shown to us yet.
It must be. I mean, like, they don't. Clearly, this movie doesn't throw in stuff for nothing. Like, every little thing, you know, means something, relates to something, is a callback to something. I think it was supposed to be him.
Well, I was wondering all of that because I don't think I fully understood it, and I don't know if I was supposed to and I just missed it, or if it's left kind of open-ended. Because there is this feeling that Miguel has a real distaste for, I guess, Miles, right? That Miles, because he's a bit of an anomaly. Like, he doesn't trust him, or that, like, he could be problematic in the universe. The challenge that I had, what I was struggling with, was two things. One, he wasn't the anomaly, it was the spider, just to be clear, right? It was the spider.
True.
Yeah.
And then
like, he didn't choose that.
well, yeah. I mean, he was from his time. Anyway. So there was that, but I guess his gripe also was that you started this whole thing with the collider and all of that. Again, it wasn't him; it was the spider. But fair enough.
And I love the relating it all back to the bagel.
Oh yeah,
so good. So good. And I loved the you know, the parallels to Everything Everywhere All at Once. They even had a billboard. I forget what universe it was in, but in one of them, it wasn't that title. It was like an Everything Bagel, blah 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 blah. Like, it was supposed to be that movie in another universe. So I love it. And like, even when Spot and Miles are fighting each other, there's that one point, like, they're flying across the screen and there's like a bagel following. Like, the bagel is just always going to be taunting him. So I just love that little detail.
And bagel was one of those onomatopoeia, or like the little comic things, bagel, right, in the first movie. So good. Sorry, I'm still on this story thing. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I'm like, I just want to make, like, did I misunderstand this? Okay, so now the idea of a canon event, is that what they're called? Canon event?
Yes.
That's his term?
Smacked my mic. That's the term in this. I think it's equivalent to a Nexus event, or a fixed point in time, although not fixed so much, because obviously it can be changed, because that's a problem. So not necessarily an unavoidable fixed point, but similar to a Nexus event from the MCU.
And also something specifically for these Spideys.
Yeah.
And generally it's the loss of someone, right? The idea of having to sort of lose them or sacrifice them, because you brought it up earlier, the idea of sacrificing one for others.
It's the loss of the relative, like the Uncle Ben allegory, or the Uncle Ben synonym. That's not the right word, but either Uncle Ben or someone who takes the Uncle Ben role.
The analogous, sure.
Yeah, and and then the death of a police captain that's close to Spider-Man. So
yeah, see, that's where I thought it was a little bit weird, and maybe the characters in the universe aren't recognizing it, and maybe that's how they're calling it. It's like, it's either your family or a police captain, which seems a little weird, but to me it was it's more about a role model, right? Or someone meaningful to, whether it's guess spoiler alert for other movies, whether it's Tom Holland's Aunt May or Andrew Garfield's and Toby's Uncle Ben, or Gwen's happens to be a police captain. So like, it's regardless of like if it's your uncle or a cop or whatever, because that's where it got a little bit weird, because I felt like they were mechanically going, like, for Miles now, it's like, oh no, my family's gonna die, right? Wasn't that his big fear? Was that
his dad.
But what's weird to me about that is, didn't he already have his canon event, which was his uncle dying in the last movie?
So there's multiple events.
Yeah,
it's not
there's
just one.
more than one. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a close family member. There's the captain, and then they showed another. What did they call it? But basically, once again, in one of the breakdowns I saw that Venom was in there. Yeah.
Wait. Say again. There
not
were
not
three...
the Venom from these movies, but like a creation of Venom was another canon event.
The symbiote.
Oh, like these are things. Oh, okay. That like all Spideys deal with.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how I understood it, at least. Yeah, there's like 5 or 6. Like.
Okay. So then I totally didn't realize. I thought it was just sort of like, okay, so you could have multiple canon events that you can't avoid, and basically it seems like all Spideys have these sort of similar points, like some kind of version of it. Okay, yes. Got it. I missed that.
Yeah, there's like the Uncle Ben analogy is like right after they get the powers, right? Because like for Miles, it was Aaron not long after he became Spider-Man, and now he's going up to the captain, which with the promotion will be his dad, and then he's gonna hit that one, and then one of the other ones that seems to happen to a lot is the girlfriend love interest, because for Peter 616 Peter it was Gwen Stacy, and for Andrew Garfield Peter it was Gwen Stacy. So I don't know how they're gonna deal with that.
Don't kill her. I love her.
Definitely
so
don't
much.
kill her. It won't be that Gwen. I don't see it being Spider-Woman.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Although that would be a way to end it. Jesus.
Okay.
I
gotta watch that again. Then again, one of those things I need to watch closely.
To Quip's point, he did have his tingles tingling with Spider Bite, just a little bit.
Yeah. I was curious about that. There seemed to be some chemistry.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of those cute little human moments in this otherwise non-human thing.
Yeah.
I love their dynamic. I loved obviously Gwen and his dynamic. Even there's a little bit of, I don't know, there's just a lot with Gwen and her band, being a person who's been in a band, and like that dynamic was fun to see her too. Her just like interacting with people, like, oh god, they're able to pull off so much with this real like finessed, elegant shorthand sometimes.
I didn't join the band to talk about my feelings. I did.
Yeah,
I know.
So and just like there's so much good. There's so much good in an animated movie, which is amazing. And you know, for some reason, for a long time, I was never really into like adult animated like TV shows and stuff. And then finally I realized I was being stupid and started watching things. Like, I grew up with The Simpsons, so I don't really know why I thought that. But I got really into like Bob's Burgers and other shows. But it's just amazing, like what you just said. You can have these real human stories and emotions and have all these feelings and have all these great little moments in something that's not real, technically. I mean, movies aren't real to begin with, but you know what I mean? Like, not live action. Yeah, because, you know, I was bawling like a baby for many parts of the movie. So it's so great. Yeah, so we covered the kind of like the plot / story. Speaking of themes, we kind of touched on this already, but a lot of daddy themes.
There were a lot of tropey themes that I've seen covered in lots of different versions of things before, like Miles having to keep a secret from his parents and not knowing how to tell them, and the stuff with that. Gwen, same thing, her relationship with her dad, having a dad who's a cop, and while we've seen all of these same kind of story beats with other things before, I still think this did them really well. Like, it could have gone the other way, where it's like, man, we've seen all of this before in so many other different stories, but they did a great job with them, and like made them interesting, even though it's, something that's been covered to death in other stories.
And each person's was so different, like Miles and his dad's was different than Gwen's and her dad's, and then even Peter B. Parker and Mayday, which I loved that so much, and her little crocheted little knit cap, and their relationship, and the fact that she was in this after in the last movie when he was like, should I be a dad? And and the fact that Miles, was the one that showed him that he could be a dad. And so of course, cool. Miguel and his daughter, just like so many like father-kid relationships. And yeah, like what you just said, we've seen it before many times, but just loved what they did with all of those and how they were so different yet paralleled each other in so many ways.
Spider-Bite alluded to it too, because she said, like, I'm an avatar, I'm actually in my parents' room, in my parents' house, it's better here.
Yes.
Like, it was better being the avatar than having to deal with her parents.
Yep, that one hit home just a little bit. I mean, but that's all of them too. Like, they're like, it's like, I mean, I couldn't imagine being put in that position as like a superhero to begin with, and then also, like you want to protect your family, but then you're also, you're keeping this big secret from them, and that's going to cause a lot of tension. That's such a fine line to walk.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the origins of the Spider-Man character, Stan Lee's talked a lot about like how we wanted to do something different in the superhero genre, and like we wanted it to be a kid or a teenager dealing with teenage problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so this again really grabs that so well with Miles and with Gwen, and as you said, even with Spider-Bite, like that's all there. This notion of like, I don't know, I'm old again, so now I'm hearing Fresh Prince. Parents just don't understand, right?
Yes.
But like the idea, like parents just don't understand for a young person who is has this crazy amount of power, right? Mm-hmm. Like again, dealing with the whole idea of like adolescence and your body changing, but like in a way that's like something that's just otherworldly, right? But it's a secret. Like I have this thing. I see the world differently because I have this ability, this power. My body's changing. It's all uncomfortable. It's all awkward. I still have to be a teenager, and that life is just awkward. And I got to deal with my parents, and that's just awkward. And oh yeah, I got to save the world, right?
Yeah.
Or worlds.
Which even his roommate mentioned, he's like, seems like you're a little stretched thin. And it's funny totally. Because before he even mentioned that, I was like, oh my God, this character is me. A. And B, I was like, oh my God, he's stretching himself too thin. And then he fucking said that. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is too meta for me.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead.
He had some good references too, where he was like, I'm not your guy in the chair.
Right.
Which was literally Ned.
Yeah.
In, Tom Holland's universe.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I've got boundaries. Like, no, I'm not going to be that guy. This is a slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but just looking at this notion of like what it must be like for that kid, like, and I guess that's where I'm going with some of the idea of like, oh, they're able to write like a real human story with this sort of superhuman story, which again is very much in line with that original Spider-Man character. We like, yes, on the one hand, I want him to save the multiverse. On the other hand, it's like, man, I want him to talk to his parents, and I want him to talk to Gwen, and I want him, and I want him to have friends, to feel like that's his whole thing, and that's kind of all their thing.
And be a kid, like, he may be a teenager, but still a kid. A lot of like good kid stuff that he's missing out on.
That is one issue I had with it, and I get that it's a teenager thing. Like Miles keeps saying, "I'm not a kid. Stop calling me a kid, dude. You are a kid.
He's 15."
Wow. You are a kid. And I get that 15-year-olds don't think that they're kids, but you're a kid. Like, that's the one thing that I'm like, dude, you're wrong. Like, other things you might be right on, but bro, you're a kid.
Yeah.
But I presume we've all been there where we
Yes.
could have sworn we weren't kids.
Yeah, 100%.
God.
We could have sworn we were making the correct, most mature decision in the world.
The God complex on me as a child. Dear God.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
I really appreciated all of that aspect and that theme. Definitely.
Yeah.
But again, so there's the weight of the world versus my own problems, like balancing all that. I thought was really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
To jump a little bit ahead to the end, because you were talking about how that screenshot going around and how Miles, I don't know. I thought I heard it. I think one goes by Miles Morales and the other one goes by Miles Morales.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
It's also
that's what I thought
voice
I heard.
actor.
Prowler Miles put more of the accent on the last name.
Morales, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Miles that we know or first become familiar is Miles Morales.
Love those little
I don't know. For me, again, just this movie hits in all sorts of different ways, but this notion of like sort of walking in two worlds and having to sort of figure out like, oh, is it Morales or Morales, or am I the hero or am I the villain? Do I, am I going to go to school and become whatever he said he was going to be, the made up job that his dad was saying, and just like be super studious and handle my business? Or am I going to run in the streets with my uncle and like do what we need to do? Because that's what we need to do. And I really love that this movie was able to sort of explore that aspect in a way that at least I didn't feel like it was like, oh, well, the kid's a kid of color, so he has to deal between being straight or a street. Like, I didn't feel that it was that. It didn't bother me in that way, but I feel like it's doing it with a lot of love and intention, because there's a lot that is, again, quickly thrown in there, but you're supposed to pick up on the history of that Miles Morales and that family, right? Because he lost his dad, and they can't make ends meet. And here you've got this uncle who's involved in a fairly lucrative, right, business, and so he's clearly helping out mom, right? And that Miles Morales is helping out a little bit. So like, I don't know, there was just a lot there. For me at least, that stuff was just resonating. I was like, wow, this is really powerful, because it's really, and I'm one of those folks who really felt like I know the other Miles is here, and it's going to be, to bring us back here, he's going to have a goatee. No, but he's going to like, right. He's from the other universe where he's kind of the quote unquote bad, but they're never really all bad. They're never really all good. Right.
No,
it's this parallel.
There's always
where
some
they have
good in
to
there.
see each other. And I don't know. I'm excited to see that story unfold and see other ones, but I really appreciated that was the big twist.
Yeah. And it was interesting because as soon as we went into Earth 42, which I didn't know at the time, I did think something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I realized it was, partially the animation style, and it was like darker and a little more green looking. And then someone even pointed out that Rio's eye color was different too. I was like, whoa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then of course, and then his room too. I was like, his room looks different. The punching bag next to his door, I was like, I don't think that was there before. Just like little things like that. But yeah, that twist was great. And yeah, the amount that we learned about this other universe's family in just a very short amount of time is a lot. And I feel like it sets it up well for the next movie. I'm very curious if they're going to center it around them, or maybe Miguel is my other thought. Because, like, we learned a little bit about Miguel's backstory, but I don't know. I'm just very curious. Like, so, like, the first one was Miles, this one was Gwen. Like, who's gonna be the next story?
Yep.
Yeah, the punching bag, just like Peter B. Parker.
Yeah, you were talking about the room when he was on Earth 42. I didn't pick up on it. I can talk, I promise. Until he crawled in the window, cuz we've only ever seen him when he crawls in or out of a window, it's his bedroom. So he crawls into this window and it's a laundry room. It's not his bedroom. Like, so I'm like, where is he? Like, I didn't catch that Rio's eyes were different. But I knew something was up because that room was always his bedroom, and when you look at it, he's standing there.
I thought it was still his bedroom.
It didn't look like it to me. Granted, it's been another day since I've seen it, but it looked to me, I'm like, that's not his bedroom. It looks like a storage/laundry room. So that's what made me think something was up.
I think it was, but it was just, I think they were purposefully darkening everything so you couldn't really tell that it was different. That's how I interpreted it. Because there was the punching bag next to the door. I don't think they would have that in the
I didn't notice that the
laundry
that
room
had the punching bag.
Yeah.
I did notice that when he dressed up and covered up his suit, right? Because Rio was about to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
His clothes were Prowler colors, were purple and green.
Ooh.
If I remember correctly, because I was like, "Oh, that's." I don't know. There's just something about the dynamic between his uncle and him that I loved from the first movie, and so I'm kind of always keyed into how they portray him, because even at the end of that, it was very much like, yeah, rest in peace, we love him, and it clearly, like, it wasn't as simple as like he's a bad guy and he has this complicated relationship with him, as does his dad. Like, that was his brother, regardless of, like, they're obviously on the opposite sides of the law. Yeah. And so
good catch.
Part of me was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's cool to see him in those colors. It's significant. I didn't necessarily catch that. Oh, this is where it's coming. But, and then I will say, I didn't assume that it was like, oh, this is a different universe or 42 or whatever. But I definitely had those, like, having watched enough sci-fi or whatever, and they I don't think I picked up on anything. I think they were throwing it in there. They were like, there's all sorts of clues in there that should make you go, the tone of the music, everything was just like,
music
up.
I was about to say, music definitely was starting to give it away.
They show Gwen separately and that she's kind of gonna go in the window. There's this tension that was very, like, I don't know. There was an old movie with Nicole Kidman where she's a ghost, and anyway, doesn't matter. But
real quick, because we all love toys here. Speaking of Miles' bedroom, when Gwen pulls apart the toy from the card.
That was great.
Oh my God, it was
Sorry,
amazing.
Kayla. Yeah, I was thinking this is Kayla Toy's bedroom. I was, for a second there, my brain was going in completely different directions. But I'm back with you. Okay, go ahead.
Both times I saw it, the audience's audible gasp after was just chef's kiss. I was just like, oh, I'm with my people right now. And it reminded me of the Joffreys this year when Jacob ripped apart Craig's ecto glow.
My theater,
and everyone was like, oh, that hurt.
Most of the people in my theater that had a reaction to it were laughing, and one of my few notes that I actually wrote down was how many collectors just cringed.
Yeah.
I totally did. I was the only one as well, but there was me and the 3 kids. There were 2 people in the same aisle and then 2 people up there. It was a fairly early thing here on the West Coast. It was like a 3:45 show on Thursday. So
yeah, mine was a 2:00 Thursday. So there were like 2 people in the top row, and like 3 people in the row behind me and the same row as me, and then like the bottom half of the theater was 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was the only clearly audible person at that moment to go, oh, was probably not that big a deal, but
it happened. It's funny because usually I try to see, like early Thursday afternoon, but we had to record that night, so I had to get ready at that time. So it's okay. I saw it later, but then I kind of loved that. Like as much as I hate people, I love going to the theaters, especially for all these geeky movies and feeling those reactions. Like I will never, I think this goes for any MCU fan, I will never forget being in the theater for Endgame when Cap gets the hammer. Like that was just insane. Absolutely insane. And I just love that energy that you get from those moments. And so in a way it was kind of nice. Both of these times that I saw the movie were like 9 something showing, so it was both were pretty packed theaters. So it was really fun to have those reactions. As much as people in movie theaters may annoy me sometimes, those are the geeks in these first few showings, and so it's nice to be a part of that and have those reactions with everyone else. I hate being around people. Yeah. Same. I feel that. But back along the lines of when you were talking about bedroom and toys, I had a few lines that were great, like the "stop talking about your holes, you're making everyone uncomfortable." And when he said, "My holes can take me anywhere."
Right.
Those are good. I think there were some other ones, but those definitely stood out to me a little bit more.
What did you all think of the Spot?
Oh, he was. I at first, I was like, oh, like how can he be a bad guy? Like he's so clumsy, blah blah. And like, is he really like? Is this his origin story? Being mad at Peter for throwing a bagel at him and then turning him into the Spot. I was like, is this really a good motive? But by the end, I was just like, oh shit. Like he went across all these universes to gain all this power. I was on board.
The Spot's logic was tenuous at best.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of the joke.
Therapy. You could probably, if you went, you would probably know that logic does not check out.
Right. And I think though that like, there's this cool thing with him and his notion of self-importance, I guess, like, cause he had to tell us, the audience and Miles, I was there that day.
I'm your nemesis.
Yeah, and I'm your nemesis, right? Which is very the Joker in the Lego Batman movie, right? But the fact that he was this background character whose big moment was the thing with the bagel, which by the way, bagels have holes, which I appreciate.
We love holes.
But just this whole, so I love that we took this rather sort of innocuous like character, and he becomes sort of a device almost in this film, right? But in his mind, he thinks he's like the most important part of the film in many ways. But then
the ego.
And then the other side is he kind of is, because that's who like 2099 folk and company are trying to hunt down or whatever. Yep. So I just find it really interesting because he's not like, he's a weirdo character, and the way they drew him in this was great too. Like, or so I said drew, but designed him, right? Yes. Was just so like grotesque. But that's part of the character. They show that how like his family and everybody else was like kind of like, oh. And even the way he's rendered has sort of like the underlying like pencil marks and structure,
love that.
Gesture marks. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I love how that's like when you're drawing a body, those are all the little circles and lines you make. Taken many art classes. I loved that, yeah, especially when he didn't have all the holes and it was just that. And then, yeah, when he became a full spot and in the collider and all of that animation and just like mesh of all these sketchy lines, and that was so cool. And even like, yeah, in his flashbacks where they were just black and white sketches, I really liked that contrast as well. So good. I'm starting to remember.
And then
Jeremy spoken. Yeah.
Wait, really?
I think the
that does not surprise me.
First, Allison said earlier, it's not about the bagel, it's about the perceived disrespect, right? And then
I thought you were gonna say it's about the whole.
and then the follow-up, the next one, Quip's next to, I think there's some I want to kind of just chime in on there. So Quip then responds or says he was making people in their universe and ours take him more seriously, right?
Yep.
And he really is the perfect villain for a multi-universal action adventure. All of those things put together, it is perfect because the notion of a multiverse is that you can't tell which event is significant. Right? That can completely change things. And literally it's this dude getting hit with a bagel that actually triggers him becoming a supervillain and all that.
Butterfly
so it is
effect.
Perfect. And we and on the one hand, we are meant to laugh at him and kind of like, this is stupid. Like, this is a distraction. Oh, this is the real story. But then again, later we find out like, no, actually him sort of coming to the realization of who he is, what his powers are, getting sucked into himself and realizing he can go into other universes. And now he's going to go and get revenge by potentially destroying the fabric of the multiverse. Yeah. He really is like, he's a joke. He's insignificant. Oh, but no, he's actually kind of a big deal. There's just on so many levels. It's pretty like, I don't know
kind of a
how
big
one,
deal.
Yeah, I don't know how one goes about writing things like that. Or if that's the beauty of having a writer's room, of having, I don't know, just so many different people coming together to hit these like this beautiful like mix of things that just works. Anyway,
yeah,
so cool.
Clearly geniuses, and I think you hit the nail on the head that he makes these people take him seriously, and he has this, I mean, he has crazy power to begin with and then even more power at the end. And I like how it's this quirky character because we've gotten the big bads many times before. Like, it's kind of a little overplayed at this point, which is interesting because there's a lot of talk of like people saying, which I think these people that are saying this aren't like geeks, nerds, comic book fans that are like, oh, how many more like superhero movies can you make and keep people interested? I'm like, well, this is a perfect example. You can take someone who's not the big bad, at least at first, and turn them into that. And, especially also bringing it back to the first movie and how it related to the first movie, and that's where he was actually created. I feel like a lot of times they'll just bring these villains into new movies and be like, okay, this is the new villain. Like, no, this guy actually had his origin story in the first movie. We may not have known about it. And it's just like perfectly intertwined in that way. Writers are chef's kiss.
And they're trying to make everybody aware of that right now as they strike. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, support the WGA.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, and another thing with the themes. I mean, we kind of touched on this, but the theme of when Miles is in the counselor's office and the guidance counselor is like, you are a blank piece of paper. And how we fill in that blank piece of paper with this movie. And we've already filled it in with the first movie, but how we're really filling it in with this movie and the next movie with his story and how he's the anomaly and how he's going to, become this person. And also with what we talked about with Rio's speech to him earlier, how she, says like there's going to be people that are like, you can't be here in these spaces, like you need to tell them like, no, I belong here. And I love how that came back again at the end of the movie. Just so good. So good. Yeah. Okay, so we covered, I think, pretty much everything. Do we want to talk about the music a little bit? No, you don't want to talk about the music?
No, I mean, it's just it's going to be another, like everything that I said before. It's like, oh my God, it was amazing.
Yeah.
I can't believe, how do they do this? Let's copy and paste for music.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm glad they got Daniel Pemberton again to do the score, and Metro Boomin to do the soundtrack. Was just beautiful. Like, I was like, how are they going to top both the score and the soundtrack? And I mean, I don't know if they quite topped it. I don't even want to like compare them because they're both so good. Like so good. I mean, I'm a big music fan, and so like I feel like Hummingbird didn't quite hit the same way Sunflower did, but I mean the rest of the soundtrack is amazing. I personally love Am I Dreaming, which is the song when they're going up to the what was that building that Miles and Gwen were like hanging off the bottom of?
In Williamsburg,
the bank.
Yeah, it was like the bank building
of something. Yeah,
it was playing during that, and then during the beginning of the credits, I was just like, ooh, this just like makes me feel something. Like, love this. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Johnny?
Now, I mean, music is. I have a weird like. I love music, but in films and stuff, I don't take note of it the way that like you just did, or like the way Ralph on live action Star Wars Q, that music is all about films and soundtracks and scores and whatnot. Like, I recognize that the music is good, and I know that it makes me like it elicits emotions, but I can't tell you why, like how it works.
Yeah. I mean, I can't either. It's a vibe.
I think it's because I'm not a musician and don't play any instruments that I don't like get it the same way that people who do play. Like, I sing and I've done karaoke, and like I've said, my voice is my instrument, but I don't know how to read music. I don't know how it works. I just listen. And so
I played the flute
if that makes any kind of sense.
5 years, and the piccolo for a little bit, but that was when I was like a kid. But I've always just been very drawn to music. I always have to have music playing in some capacity. I'm sure that's also part of my neurodivergence. But yeah, it's just always really spoken to me. And like I just said, it sounds very cliche and whatever the youngest generation is called now, but like it's the vibes you get from music. Like, there's certain songs that just speak to my soul, essentially. And I feel like that's what the Am I Dreaming song did for me, which to give credit is Metro Boomin, A$AP Rocky, and Royce. Don't know that artist, but love.
Kind of alluded to it a little bit ago in terms of like how this Spider-Man, this version of Spider-Man, and this version of Spider-Man movies and storytelling is new and different, right? This is not Peter Parker. This is Miles Morales. This is they're telling everything from the ground up. This is a new Spider-Man. And I think there's a little bit of a meta thing going on with that too, but I'll get back to that. But the soundtrack totally works in that way. It's very much a soundtrack for Miles' generation, if you will. Like the Nike wearing, right? Like hoodie rocking. I have my son's cool little hoodie. He can't fit into it anymore. I miss my little babies. They're too big to wear this anymore. But the hoodie rocking, like spray painted Spider-Man logo, kid who is a graffiti artist in this old abandoned subways in New York, who has to go to a charter school. Fine. Like,
Has to.
but it's very like the music very much captures that. And then each Spider-Man actually has their own musical cues, even in the first movie, right? And Penny has her very much a Penny Parker soundtrack, as does
So good.
Peter Porker have his sort of like Looney Tunes-esque music cues, and Miles has his music. And as a kid who was an artist too at one point, I know the either having headphones or whatever and just sitting and zoning out and drawing, that's one of my favorite parts of that first movie. And then to sort of see that vibe kind of continued here with the music was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to name that, like, the music actually sort of captures, I think, the spirit of the movie being like, this is very much a Miles Morales story and a story for a new generation of Spider fans, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was saying earlier about like, there's a little bit of a meta thing going on, because I think there's something to this particular storytelling of like, hey, Spider-Man isn't just Peter Parker. He's not just white. He's not just a guy. He's not just a human being. Sometimes he's not just a kid, because we have an old,
oh my God,
we have an old father, Spider-Man too. Like he's not a bunch of things. Right. And this movie is just kind of like, yeah, get over it. Here they are. Get used to it. Like it just is. And it doesn't pull any punches with that. And I don't feel like it's done in a way where, well, whatever, people could disagree, but I don't think it's like beating you in the head with it. I think it's actually just like,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And I think that's to me, one of the great ways to use multiversal storytelling to just get people to loosen up a little bit with what I will say are the canon experiences. This notion that, hey, you're violating canon and we have to now come around and correct things because you're violating canon. We have to, whatever.
Your superhero with all these abilities that aren't real is not the color I want them to be.
Yeah, it's like
your mermaid is not the color I want to be. Exactly. A mermaid is not a real thing.
So it's like you're going like, we have to fire Kathleen Kennedy. We have to fire anyone involved with Kevin Smith and what he did to Masterverse. Like that notion to me in my head was this meta story of like Miguel O'Hara for some reason missed the boat, and he is mistaken in his overzealous attempt to control canon and the timeline, and without possibly seeing that it is possible for there to be multiple, versions of this story that I don't know, that we don't have to be so precious about. I don't know how much that sort of falls apart if I look too closely, but that's something that I was sort of seeing, and I love it. They're just like, they could have chosen any number of other Spider verses to zero in on Spider characters, but they chose Jessica Drew, and they said, we're going to have her Jessica Drew voiced by Issa Rae. She's going to have a giant afro and she's going to be pregnant
and on a motorcycle.
So it's like
fucking cool.
You can tell they made lots of like decisions with this movie that I think are super smart. And we're going to follow Gwen. Like, we're going to follow her for anyway, whatever. There's a lot of great things happening with here. And I bounce off the music because I feel like the music does that as well. And we kind of already talked about how the animation and the art style does that as well. Just a lot of smart as hell stuff.
There was, and one of the things with Gwen too, as far as like inclusivity and whatnot goes, is, I don't remember if it was Screen Crush that pointed it out or if it's something else. Like the colors on Gwen's costume and in her room and whatnot are like trans pride flag colors. The pink and teal.
Gwen has a Protect Trans Kids poster above her door that they show.
That was.
And Miles has a BLM pin on his backpack. So we love all of that very much. Very much. And also happy Pride, y'all. Speaking of that.
Third day.
Yep.
There was something that you said that... Go ahead.
Sorry, real quick. I have
I'm thinking.
Point out Quip's comment. We want to see her hot husband in Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. We do. And by we, I mean me.
Gwen was
Quickly,
totally you in
just
that
remind-
moment when she was like, "Will you adopt me?"
Yes.
Yes, I was about to say that.
Yeah.
That was what I was going to say right now. I was like, that line. I was like, that's me. Me. Please adopt me.
Yeah, I
Like,
love
and she had
that,
just
that
met her
moment.
too. That would just made it even better. Like, maybe if there was like a couple minutes more, that would make more sense. But it was just like an instant, like, will you adopt me?
Which I loved seeing that because we didn't see much of that aspect of Gwen in the first movie or even in this after it when she's on her own and she's quipping like we're used to the spider characters quipping and like Miguel's like, "You're not funny," and she's like, well, yeah, I kind of am.
Yeah.
That whole opening segment with her was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super
yeah.
smart.
So
And I
well
did see
done.
The Little Mermaid yesterday too, by the way. And I will tell you, I don't know if you
I need to see
haven't,
it.
for me watching Across the Spider-Verse and then Little Mermaid was fascinating. They both do they make very similar moves. And in order to make those moves of sort of like subverting the original material, even though Miles Morales did exist in the comic books, but in a way where you can't do that unless you really know and study and love the original stuff. Like that's, and I think there's a lesson there to be learned when, when people try and create new stories that represent more people. It's not even just representing people more in the new versions, but it's also representing the changing times and the changing culture and sentiment. Whether people want to realize it or not, I think there has been a lot more cultural like inclusion. Like it's not perfect, but the times have shifted. It's not just, quote unquote, catering to a particular demographic. It's also that like our storytelling and our concept of the world has changed. So that has to be reflected in the story. But
yes,
but both of these movies, The Little Mermaid and Across the Spider-Verse, they're successful in from my perspective because they know the source material and the original material, and they clearly love it. There's no at all attempt to like bash it or destroy it, but because they know it so well, they're able to make some really clever writing moves, dialogue moves, like even like inflections and some of the way that the characters say lines. That happened a lot in Little Mermaid, the way she phrases certain things when she sings. There are things where I'm like, oh yeah, that's what has been missing from the original, like that sentiment right there. Anyway, I put those two up for very obvious reasons, because I think there's like people who are like, wait, Peter Parker's supposed to be a white guy, or Little Mermaid's supposed to be a white mermaid, as you point
mermaid.
out.
Once again,
I know, but
imaginary creature.
But yeah, clearly the people involved in these things, they know what they're doing. And yes, and I know people who work on similar projects who find themselves in a very similar position where they're being attacked even before the thing is finished or released for whatever, like destroying people's childhood or having an agenda. But I've seen firsthand, like they're very careful. They know what they're doing. They want it to be a love letter, but they also, for obvious reasons, feel the need to make some changes, but they're doing it in a way that I think is super smart. Anyways, I don't know why. I will say the funny thing about all of this is that like somehow Sony and Disney have like are the ones who are doing this, which is just so different from when I was growing up and my relationship with these companies who were not speaking to me, I guess, when I was a teenager. But
how the turntables have turned for the better, luckily. Yeah, that's very interesting to think about. But yes, what you said times infinity. I think that's about it. One quick thing I saw in my notes. Sorry, real quick.
Go ahead.
Because it's at the end of my notes. I think Mary Jane says it at the end with Peter B. Parker. She calls it Comics Con.
Yeah. No, that was Rio.
Oh no, it was Rio.
Miles.
Yeah, what is this Comics Con?
Oh, it was
when
Rio.
Miles was told her that he was Spider-Man. She's like, "Yeah, who's Spider-Man? Is this like one of your Comics
Comics
Con.
Con.
I think they were leaning towards cosplay. Yeah, he's like, and Miles was like, I don't, what's Comics Con?
Yeah. I think that's it. Sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
I want to talk about this because so did I, Quip.
Oh yeah.
And so the night before, I think it was Wednesday night, I was looking for like information on the popcorn buckets, trying to figure out if I was going to get one or not. I held off because I'm like, unlike Kayla, I don't have a collection, and I don't need one. I wanted one.
Wait, that's a bucket?
Yeah, it's a bucket.
You're eating out of her head?
I didn't actually.
Interesting.
But I really wish I had gotten the Miles one the first night too, because it's so cool. Like his eyes are just clear, so you can see the popcorn through his eyes. Okay. I'm like, what the heck? I should have gotten that one too. But yes, I do have my popcorn buckets up there. Well, wrong direction. I will find it. There we go. As I'm talking very close to my mic. I'm sorry.
So the night before, I was looking for information on the popcorn buckets, and I came upon a site on like AMC's site that had the Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 on it, and I was like, wait a minute. What are you talking about? I had no clue. And apparently it was announced back before the trailer that it was going to be a two-parter. I didn't have any idea. And even after I saw that, I'm like, what? Did they ruin a surprise? What's going on? But watching the movie, by the time we're getting to the end of the movie, I'd completely forgotten about it. So when they ended and came up with the, Miles Morales, very MCU with Miles Morales will return and Beyond the Spider-Verse, I was like,
shit.
What the shit?
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was going to be a double.
Same thing. I had heard that it was going to be part 1 a while ago, but then kind of forgot about it. And I think I thought maybe that wasn't going to be a thing anymore. And then when I was watching some stuff breaking down the trailers before I saw it, they mentioned that again, that it was going to be part 1. And I did the same exact thing. I was watching it, completely forgotten. At the end, I was like, well, fuck. This is it. But this is it in the most perfect way. Honestly, the cliffhanger just made it that much better.
Yeah, and at least apparently it's already in post-production, so the writer's strike shouldn't affect it. And it's
supposed to be out next March.
Supposed to be out, yeah, the beginning of...
So less than a year.
10 months, yeah. So that's not too bad, but yeah.
Yeah, I was aware of it and knew that it was like kind of the Lord of the Rings / the Matrix style thing where they were essentially working on it as one big thing, if that makes sense, broken up into 2 parts.
So I think with the next part, I think because I didn't see the 90s animated Spider-Man, which is probably the one that I'm most familiar with outside of comics. The one that ran along with when X-Men animated series was running. I'm expecting to see him. Yeah, him show up in it, and maybe some stuff with like from that with Madam Web and that whole aspect of the Spider-Verse. I don't know if they'll bring anything like that in. It could be interesting to see.
I saw something about Madam Web, but I think that was for live action something because it was supposed to be
they were
Dakota
working on a
Johnson.
Madam Web movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of Sony's tangential Spider-Man projects that they were trying to do a Madam Web movie.
I like to call them Sony's "That's Cute" movies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
An Aunt May. They were working on an Aunt May movie at one point.
I still haven't seen Venom 2. And I don't really remember much of what happened in the first Venom. Sorry,
I've seen both of them, but
Venom, Venom 2, Morbius, Madam Web. It's going to be a great movie.
I haven't seen Morbius either. I could not put myself through that. Oh, real quick though. I did see something about people not being able to hear the dialogue correctly and wanted to talk about that real quick. The parts that I kind of struggled to hear was Gwen's opening kind of monologue. There were certain parts that were hard to hear, and then I think it was again later. It was a similar type of situation where the music was really loud, and I think it was when Miles was talking. That I kind of like I heard and I was like, well, my hearing's kind of shit. Maybe this is just me. And then I saw like IGN put out a post about it and I was like, oh, this is a thing that's happening. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. Spider blood.
Spider blood. Sorry, it's the 90s theme song.
It's Morbin time. Also, what Ryan Dole is known for is Morpheus.
I had the same experience with it. It felt like there were times where the music and dialogue mix was off, like you said, and it was like the tail end of Gwen's. But maybe it was by design because she's narrating internally, but they're also showing that she is banging the shit out of those drums.
Yep.
Because she's pissed off and like wants to get it out. So maybe it was a sort of a by design thing with that. I don't know about was it maybe during the fight with Miles and his parents where they put the music up to kind of bring you more in the moment so that you couldn't hear their argument as well over the music because that was what was happening in the scene. I don't know. That's just a shot in the dark from me.
No, I knew that seemed to be a choice. I can't. I wish I could remember.
The only one I can remember as well is like specifically remember is the Gwen opening, and I just now thought about that with, she's really banging the shit out of the drums. Maybe we're not supposed to hear it as well.
That's a good point. Totally could have been that.
I mean, I don't know that at any point I was like, I can't hear what they're saying, but I do. I mean, but there were times when it seemed clear to me that like I'm not necessarily supposed to pick out every bit of dialogue, like because again, I was saying earlier, things move really fast, especially when they're in that spider complex in 2099 or wherever they are, and it's like lots of quick little things happening in the background where like I wanted to hear it because I'm like I'm sure there's gonna be some really cool Easter eggs, but you just they move.
That's what rewatches when it comes out for home purchase are going to be for.
Yeah, I was going to say I am a big I love subtitles, aka subtitties. And
was that a reference to Total Recall?
Sure. And I do miss them when I'm at the movies. So I don't know if that was something like Brick, do you normally have subtitles on when you watch things at home?
I did for a long time until I started watching Mandalorian and they spoiled some things in the subtitles and I learned my lesson and I don't watch it the first time with them on. There was some dialogue that comes up early that like it was anyway. I used to, but then now I usually.
I love that. I think it was Game of Thrones that got me into it because there was so many little. There were many little things. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say this. The other pieces, there were times when, again, I don't know exactly what people are referring to, but like Johnny's pointing out, I think there are times when dialogue is said where I think there are some creative choices, presumably that were made so that we don't necessarily catch or hear everything. And I think I was gonna say that it reminds me of the fact that. Rio's stuff is not in when she speaks Spanish or when he speaks Spanglish or either one of them. There's not like subtitles. It's very similar. It's like if you can understand it, cool. If you can't, it's fine. And it has always felt like I never felt like at any point in the movie, I didn't hear that. I must have missed some crucial thing.
I loved this line too.
Yeah, totally. I know. I was like, uh-oh.
My grandpa, so my great grandparents were from Spain and Portugal and came to this country as indentured servants. And so my grandpa was also an indentured servant. And so he was fluent in Spanish and Portuguese. And he unfortunately passed away when I was 7, but I distinctly remember when he would say things to me, and like I generally understood because A, I was around it a lot, and B, especially with Spanish, like Spanish and like Italian, I would say you can kind of figure out what
The
people are
Latin
saying just by,
probably.
inflection and hand
Hmm.
gestures and whatnot. And yeah, he would always get mad at me and be like, "You didn't understand that?" I'm like, "No, I am child. I don't know what
I am
this is."
child.
But like generally I would be able to figure it out. So I just the Spanglish moment, that was funny.
Yeah, so I don't know again if there were particular moments. So I didn't necessarily hear anything about the sound, but on the language thing, it's the MCU, so it's adjacent. Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever did a lot of some great things with language and
Mhm.
the text of locations when they sort of
Yeah.
showed the language of what do they call them? Talokan.
Mhm.
Um, and I love it. Yeah, we don't need the subtitles. Just like go. And the way they're
No.
kind of like, no, you're fine. You'll be fine. It's okay. This isn't necessarily for
Yeah.
you, and it doesn't take anything away from you. But
Yeah.
anyway, love it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I'm very curious if it was maybe just a choice that they made, or it could have been cuz Johnny, did you see it in Dolby or was it just regular?
It was just regular. It was one of the small theaters, so it was just.
Okay.
It wasn't
But you
any
did see it
special.
at AMC, right?
Yeah.
And I saw it at AMC. So I don't know if maybe it's an AMC thing.
Maybe.
Or just could
Oh,
be
because
like
of the
the
sound degradation
theaters.
thing.
Yeah, could be the theaters, but like also like I saw it in Dolby. Dolby's supposed to be the best audio quality,
Yeah.
and it's still who
Says
knows.
Dolby.
But yeah, just wanted to talk about that real quick. So overall thoughts. Go.
Just it was good. I don't know. Overall thoughts.
10 million thumbs up.
You can go back and rewind 2 hours and it's there. But no, I think it's, for me, I've said that this is like an important movie on multiple levels. And I think some of the comments that I made tonight might sort of help understand why. I just really appreciate that these movies exist. I appreciate that people I teach high school. So my students' generation has a Miles Morales that they can watch, that I think they can enjoy a lot more for a bunch of reasons, including, as we said, even the music. I feel like it's just a lot more, and the aesthetics is just
Mm-hmm.
it's very much for them, and the speed and the pacing, all that stuff about
Yeah.
people saying it's really fast or it moves like, yeah, these are the same kids who are like watching 2-minute videos and moving
Yeah.
on to the next one.
Not even 2 minutes. Vine ruined everything.
Right. So, yeah, I think it's an important movie. I think it's a gorgeous movie. I think it's a super elegant and well thought out movie, and I need to go see it again.
Yeah. I want to see it like 4 more times minimum.
Yep. I'm gonna need to watch it more. It was, and I want to watch Into the Spider-Verse and this back to back more often. I think this is going to be, once everything's out, and I'm looking forward to the Gwen, Jess Drew, and someone else all female Spider-Verse spinoff that I've seen rumored, talked about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, apparently there's going to be an all-female Spider-Person movie with Gwen, Jess Drew, and someone else. I don't
Penny
know if it's been
Parker?
it didn't say another female Spider-Person.
But this animated
Yeah.
Spider-Verse. Oh,
From what I read,
cool.
I might be wrong. I don't know if that's
Fluff,
right.
yeah.
I've read rumors, but I'd be looking forward to that if that does happen.
If so, they need to have females on the team. Like while the crew was very diverse, there was not a lot of females working on it, sadly. But,
I'm like, that's literally what they were talking about. You mean on the production team?
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love you, Allison.
7 sure it's just
Well, we can say this here. Fuck them. They deserved it.
Yeah. For real. Yeah, I hope that's the case. And I mean, considering what they did with the Spider-Verse movies, yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, apparently it was announced in November 2018. It's going to be a spinoff. It's Gwen Stacy,
Oh,
Jess
maybe
Drew,
Spider-Bite.
and Cindy Moon as Silk.
Oh, Silk.
Yeah, which I don't think she's been in either of these mentioned yet. So maybe she'll be the POV character with Gwen and Jess like helping her along. That'll be interesting. I'd like to see it.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I can't say enough about this movie. And I was gonna say I watched Into the Spider-Verse twice this past week before I saw Across, and I think it benefited from seeing it right before again, just like that. I mean, it always does with any sequel, but especially considering how much this is intertwined with the first movie. Yeah, it just makes it that much better. Plus it just felt like it like didn't feel like a sequel, like how this one is part one, like it just felt like part two almost, like exactly what you were talking about before, Brick. Like it's like Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, like they all fit well together. And I hope we can say the same about Beyond. Fingers crossed, but I'm sure it will be, considering how amazing these two movies were. And yeah, go see it and go see it again and again and again.
Did you have overall, Johnny?
Yeah, it's good. Go see it. I don't know if I covered it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's definitely worth it. Yeah, I can't pontificate too much about it. I enjoyed it. That's what I look for from movies. I see a lot of people who are saying it's their favorite comic book movie. It's the best comic book movie they've ever seen. It might be the best of all time. Yeah. I think a lot of that is a matter of perspective. I think it's great. I don't know if I could say which is the best comic book movie of all time. There's so many that have their own things about them. It's definitely unique with it, and Into the Spider-Verse, as far as the style, the way it's presented is fantastic. I can't see anybody saying, no, this was bad, don't bother. Like that would be a weird take, but to each their own.
The racist might say that.
What's that?
Can I say, since I know we're sort of wrapping up, but on the tip of the animation and the way it's just presented, yes, just the tip, that this is like, this film and the first one are super, I think, significant, and signal a little bit of a shift in terms of what mainstream audiences are either wanting, clamoring for, or willing to accept as animation. I think the way that it really just took off in this like clearly unique visual direction. And I will say Lord and Miller were also connected to the Lego movie. I'd say the same of that movie, that I feel like our concept of what an animated film could look like, not just be like, because I think we've kind of made that jump to accept like things like with Pixar and Illumination. Like I think there's a sense that like we can embrace more so like real serious stories, heartfelt stories, etc. But now it's like the looks of it, that it all doesn't have to look like Toy Story or like CG models. Yeah. That you can even mix in the sort of like 2D with the 3D kind of style. And you were mentioning it earlier, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that's coming out just in a couple of weeks or next week. That like clearly like our sense of animation is just like it's broadening, and I love it. I'm here for it, and I'm just excited for what animation is going to look like coming out of Hollywood in the next couple of years.
Two things I want to mention that I just remembered / thought about before I forget. One, remember like what?
TMNT comes out in August.
Yeah,
August 2nd.
Remember, it might have been like a decade ago now. When did the Watchmen movie come out? It's been over a decade at this point, right?
It's been over a decade. I want to say like
I'll look it up.
08, 09-ish, maybe. I don't know.
Remember about that time
Speaking of
when
Doris, sorry, go ahead.
remember about that time when
2009.
like motion comics became a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it because of that what was the one that was
I love your
within
guesses.
the Watchmen universe. They released a motion comic. It was like a pirate themed motion comic thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah. The black something, the name of the ship where the guy.
I want to say Black Pearl, but I think that's me thinking of like Pirates of the Caribbean.
I thought
Pirates.
so too, but they're very similar actually.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking the same thing, like, oh wow, those are names something. Anyways,
But yeah, motion comics. This feels kind of like a higher budget evolution of like motion comics, because motion comics were cool. Like they were a neat idea, and I kind of missed that they're Black Corsair. Thank you, Allison. I think that they've kind of been neglected lately. So, I mean, that was just a random thought. I'm thinking about motion comics now. 2, especially with the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie, I would love to see a Legend of Zelda treated this way, like with this much care and attention to detail. And the animation style, because the games are already, since Wind Waker, that's one of the great things about the Zelda games, with it, like everybody had an aneurysm about cell shading when Wind Waker was first revealed, but pretty much no, because Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess didn't use them, but Breath of the Wild kind of went back to the cell shading look, and Tears of the Kingdom has too. It's great for it. The visuals don't age as much over time. You can go back and it looks better for longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where you could do
Better for longer.
a animated movie in that style and it wouldn't feel out of place, and it will look gorgeous. So I would love to see.
Agreed.
Like I said, especially with the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie, I'd love to see Legend of Zelda done with this kind of treatment.
The one that you said, the style that you're advocating for, which game?
Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
Those are the newest ones.
Those are the newest ones. Yeah.
Okay, got it. I agree, but I would love to see the sort of, is it Wind Waker, Majora's Mask that had that? Like have them maybe do like flashbacks to the lore in that style.
Yeah. Wind Waker was way more kind of almost a chibi. Like Japanese animation chibi style.
Yeah.
And Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time were N64, so they were more traditional 3D textures.
But stylized, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I think, because Majora's Mask was kind of bridging the gap between Ocarina and Wind Waker, so it got a little more, it still had aspects of, being 3D with textures and whatnot, and then the full cell shading with Wind Waker. Real quick before we get back onto,
I know we're in Nintendo Zone. It's cool. We can stay in Nintendo Zone for a little bit. Geek
back on Spider-Verse. I think if you're going to do a movie, you have to give Link a voice, and people are just going to need to get over it. Like, it's going to be in the games. Well, even in Tears of the Kingdom, he has dialogue choices, so he talks. You just don't hear his dialogue spoken ever. You do hear a voice that makes grunts and like noises when he swings his sword, gets hit by monsters.
Grunts.
I get it is, in the games, it's a immersion aspect of like putting yourself in Link's shoes. But I think if you're going to do a movie with it, he has to have a voice and he has to speak.
Yeah.
That's why you need the right team that's going to take care and attention with the characters and the property.
Yep, I know it.
True.
And while we're here in Nintendo Land, because Super Mario Brothers was great too, that was another great movie.
Yeah.
So good.
Yes, give me that Zelda film that Johnny just pitched, and then please take me to Justin Bailey territory and get me Metroid.
Yes.
But anyway, we can, for another stream, we can geek the F out another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing we have, because obviously I think we would all recommend this movie to everyone, is any other predictions for the next movie?
Oh, it's gonna suck. No, I'm
Yeah.
I think that is one thing we know for sure, that it will not suck. Like,
I don't know
not
if
even come close.
I don't know if I'd say predictions, but things I'd like to see is 90s Spider-Man, some kind of tie-in with Madam Web and that whole aspect of the Spider-Verse and the Web of Destiny. I forget what they actually called it.
I mean, Miles just called it the
Conjecture?
spider web.
Yeah. Conjecture, you might see a more concrete MCU tie-in. I don't know if we'd get a live action cameo from Tom Holland.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the other two.
The other thing I've seen people been positing is getting live action Miles in that film somehow. I don't know. Either way, with the last two movies have been home runs. I think the next one's going to be a grand slam.
Yeah.
Ooh, I got that sports reference.
Sports.
I think
I do love baseball.
I think there was something you were saying about live action. I totally lost it. But as far as conjecture, it's called Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's another like that. I think maybe potentially lends towards what you're saying, that maybe we will get a hint at.
Maybe we'll get a Loki cameo.
Ooh.
I would die. Both Toms. Just put both
and really
Toms
quickly,
in there.
Tom Holland was in this movie, sorta, in that they referenced Doctor Strange screwing with the multiverse, which I thought was like, oh, that's fascinating.
She's like, it sounds like he shouldn't be practicing medicine.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
I think in terms of if I were to have to make a prediction, because I'm going to go back to the notion that we went with Miles' story and then we went to Gwen. There was a part earlier where we were wondering, could it be more about Miguel or somebody else? I think it's going to come back to sort of focusing on Miles, because I actually think the idea is that Gwen plays a pivotal role in Miles' story, right? And I think that...
or could it be Miles G. Morales?
What do you mean?
Miles.
The Prowler.
Oh, Braid. Yeah, I wonder. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I guess all I was gonna say is that
because it's still Miles.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I have no real prediction.
I feel like that would be. I don't think that's what it would be. Yeah, if anything, it's gonna bring it back to Miles, because I think if you're wrapping it up, you shouldn't do anyone else.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, they could, do multiple people, or I mean, it's Miles and Gwen are so intertwined that even though this movie was, narrated by her at the beginning and tied at the end with her, it's still, it still felt like just as much Miles' story.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do.
This felt as much a movie about Gwen as it did a movie about Miles.
Yeah,
like it felt like it was about both of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have no idea. What they're gonna do. Yeah, I really want Tom Holland. That would be amazing. Big fan. I think that's really all for predictions for me.
I have a concrete prediction question for you. Will we learn more about Spider-Bite in the way that we learn more about Gwen Stacy in this movie?
I hope so. I mean, his tingles were tingling for her.
Yeah.
Because that was the one part of this where I felt like they were teasing more that we didn't get.
Yeah, and she had the opportunity to shut the machine down before it sent him home, and she didn't. Like, she purposefully let it finish. So,
and she's there at the end with the team.
Yeah,
so.
she joins.
Oh, is she? I missed her on the. Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah.
I just didn't. Yeah, she's on the team. So my question was, would they maybe they begin with her telling her backstory more? Like, I don't know.
Maybe.
Ooh. Could be. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
They could, if they play their cards right, they could just like, Disney Plus is creating a bunch of series. They could turn this little Across the Spider-Verse realm or whatever into a bunch of
Universe.
cool little series. I know I was avoiding it, but and I wouldn't be mad at Sony if they just gave up on their live action stuff and instead focused on this.
I mean, it would be the smart move. Just saying. Yeah. Awesome.
Good stuff.
Any last minute comments?
If you haven't seen it already, why are you watching us talk about it? Go watch it.
Go see it. And if you have already seen it, go see it again.
Go see it
and again. And again.
Yeah.
And if you happen to go to AMC and they have cookies and cream popcorn, get it. I got it last night. It is amazing. It is so good.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was like black and white popcorn. I asked the lady, I was like, what is that? And she said cookies and cream. I'm like, I'm in. It was really good.
Thanks, Quip.
Yay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. And thanks everyone who's watching this in the future. Thank you for joining us, Brick. It was so awesome having you here.
Absolutely.
Hope to have you on again.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
tell
great
everyone
talking with you about the movie.
Tell everyone where we can find you.
You can find me actually if you just go to bricksomething.com, it'll take you to the YouTube channel. That's the main thing, but also there is Instagram, and on Instagram I am at brick.something. I will be around the internets. Yeah, I'll be on the internets. I think I'm gonna be jumping on Oz's like right after this on Nostradamus Toys, and we're gonna talk toys and look at some Mythic Legions. Mythic Legions did a bunch of cool new announcements, and we're all gonna geek the F out about highly detailed figures of skeletons. And tomorrow sometime I'm going to find a way to finish editing this thing. We will have the second episode of, wait for it, Allison, Animal Warriors of the Kingdom talk, AWOC talk, should be released tomorrow. And speaking of motion comics, Johnny, I've been sort of trying to take bits of the Animal Warriors of the Kingdom comics and doing a little bit of a pseudo motion comics thing with them because it's a great property. The toys are fantastic. Here you go. Here's Allison's teasing me because I'm a shill for Animal Warriors of the Kingdom.
Shillin'.
The toys are fantastic, but the lore and the comics and the again, talk about love letters to genre fiction, but that Animal Wars Kingdom comic book is very much that, and I've tried to like throw that up on YouTube to get people to be enticed by the comics a little. So and I'll be on Highly Articulated tomorrow at 2ish, I think.
I was about to ask if you were going to be on that.
I think so.
So many things. Amazing. Thanks again for joining, and if you want to find us, you can find us at GTFO channel on Instagram and Twitter. Yes, we have a Star Trek show that we do weekly on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we're going episode by episode from the beginning of Star Trek, the original series. I have seen nothing of Star Trek except for the Chris Pine movies. Johnny has seen everything.
Pretty much everything, yeah.
And yeah, just watching them one by one and giving our reactions and discussing them. Yeah, and it's been super fun. We just finished episode 4, The Naked Time. That was a really fun discussion. Spoiler alert, no one is naked. I was very sad.
Sulu's half naked.
Yeah. I mean, and Kirk's almost naked in almost half naked in every episode anyway, so that's pretty normal. So yeah, we have that going on and hope to do more geeky stuff in the future, potentially maybe either a Transformers stream, maybe. We'll see.
Transformers,
we'll see. The new movie.
Movies? Okay, movies.
It's coming up. We'll see. But yeah, I want to do a lot more geeky things in the future. And yeah, smack that like, smack that subscribe, smack that bell icon, all the smacking, and do the same on Brick's channel, please. He deserves all the
All
smacking
the
as
smacking.
well.
I do. Smack me around. I like it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining.
Peace and long life.
Yes. Peace and long life. You do it better than I do.
Peace and long life, West Side. Sorry. Yep.
Love it.
Live long and prosper, everybody. Thanks for geeking the F out.
Yep.
See you later.
Thanks, y'all.
Hey, 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 hey.